This is Proxy Countdown. Welcome to the big show for the week of March 4th, 2024. Alongside my tag team partner, Matt Mascardi. I'm Damian Rallis on today's Countdown. Several leadership changes at JB Hunt, including a new made-up board role, an activist investor win at Ventas, a proxy contest fizzles at Starbucks and heats up at Disney, a shareholder win at Jack in the Box, and a near win at Deere. And on the big vote, Matt bumps into a company he doesn't hate, Analog Devices.
It's true. It's uncomfortable for me.
Let's get to our top stories in the trade wire. Ventas lead director James Shelton is stepping down. Shelton held the second most influence on the Ventas board at 13%, meaning that CEO and chair Deborah Cafaro's power is due to grow. However, activist investor Land and Buildings Investment Management reached a cooperation agreement with Ventas where two of its three board nominees will be added to the board. They are Theodore Bigman, formerly at Morgan Stanley Investment Management, and Joe Rodriguez Jr., former chief investment officer at Invesco Real Estate. In an unusual board leadership arrangement, hold on to your hats for this one, JB Hunt Transport Services appointed current executive chair Kirk Thompson and current director and former chair Wayne Garrison to serve as honorary founding directors. Have you heard of that one before?
I've never
Honorary
heard of that.
founding directors. As honorary founding directors, they will provide advice and counsel to the board and management and will, upon invitation by the board, be expected to attend board and committee meetings. They will receive access to all information and materials provided to the board, but they will not be entitled to vote on or consent to any board matters.
This is not a good idea.
They will be employees of the company, but the company did not announce the compensation arrangements. Also, CEO John Roberts III will become the new executive board chair, and Shelley Simpson, that's right, a woman, will become CEO in July. Matt, Shelley started as an hourly customer service representative in 1994. Rags to riches story right there.
Good for her. However, she is going to be sitting in a room with the person she used to report to and two honorary founding directors who don't have a vote, but just sit there and tell you what to do and see all the information.
Even worse will be majority shareholder John L. Hunt, who controls 17% of shares. She's also actively involved with this company, so she has a lot of power to go through.
What is this role? There's not exactly a CEO role here. This is not great.
And finally, in celebrity CEO news, AT&T added former Yahoo CEO Marissa Mayer to its board. Moving over to our proxy cage matches. A group of labor unions said on Tuesday that it was ending its proxy fight at Starbucks after the two sides agreed last week to work toward a foundational framework on collective bargaining. So the Strategic Organizing Center, they said this in a press release: "We feel that now is the time to acknowledge the progress that has been made and to allow the company and its workers to focus on moving forward." So, Matt, the SOC has withdrawn its three board nominees.
Look, I said this on our other podcast, Business Pants, in a much more aggressive way, but I think optimism is not a reason to withdraw unless they've gotten some sort of, assurance that the labor negotiations are going to go a certain way. It makes no sense to pull down the slate, even if they lost the slate. You've allowed investors to see what it could look like with a guardrail slate about labor. I'm not sure pulling them down is the right call, but if they're optimistic, I guess that counts for something.
I know this, Matt. In the art of labor negotiations, when Howard Schultz is angry, it means you might be winning. because their founder and former CEO, 10 times Howard Schultz, seems to be hot and bothered by all this. So I think the Strategic Organizing Center maybe has a reason to feel optimistic.
I suppose that's true. Howard Schultz did pen a letter in which
Another
he talked
letter.
about the define what soul
Define the
is.
soul of Starbucks,
Starbucks.
which has nothing to do with this matter, but that's great. At the Disney proxy cage match, Trian, I always mispronounce it, released a 133-page white paper that included the following things, Matt. First of all, they said the term restore the magic 12 times. They said fail or failure 35 times. But more importantly, they said the word board 304 times and director 99 times. Because of this, this is their quote from that white paper. We believe the root cause of Disney's underperformance is poor oversight from the board. They also said industry disruption does not absolve Disney's board for poor performance. It is the board's job to look over the horizon. They also said the board's succession failures have created a leadership void. And they said that Disney's board has overseen poor shareholder returns. Disney has significantly underperformed the S&P 500 during every director's tenure. So, Matt, here is an activist investor that knows that the board matters, that the people on the board matters.
I think two things are true. First of all, that Peltz is absolutely right to call out the board in this case, of which Iger is a part. But this board, there are members on it who approve Chapek coming in, who approved Iger being the executive chair, who then immediately switched back to Iger and boomeranged back in. There are elements of what Peltz is saying that are absolutely right. But to call it a 133-page white paper about why Trian should basically get their directors, Nelson Peltz and Jay Rasulo, is a little disingenuous, given that of the 133 pages, I think there's 30-ish pages that are devoted to the strategy going forward for Disney, of which 10 of those pages are Nelson Peltz is great. I'm not exactly sure that is. The rest of it is all about all of Disney's failings. I get that the board has failed, and I agree, and that the emphasis should be placed on board here. But there also needs to be some other side of this coin, which is an idea from new board members how to actually turn this around that aren't just be Netflix.
Here's the head scratcher to me is that the white paper calls out the close relationship Bob Iger has with Chair Mark Parker and then GM CEO Mary Barra. They also suggest that the chair, Mark Parker, is spread too thin because they call it that his chairmanship of both Nike and Disney is unprecedented. And yet they are not targeting Mark Parker to be voted out. They are targeting Michael Froman, who nobody knows, and Maria Elena Lagomasino. So I don't... Some of it doesn't add up to me, but I appreciate the focus on the board.
I mean,
itself.
The only theory I had on why those two was the nominating committee. They're both on the nominating committee, and so is Amy Chang and Mark Parker. Well, Parker is the chair of the board. Amy Chang actually sat on Procter & Gamble's board with Nelson Peltz, which means she's less likely to be targeted by him. So it was the two people he didn't know sitting on the nominating committee who chose to bring back Iger, I guess, but that's all speculation.
Moving over to our vote results table. At Jack in the Box, a shareholder proposal from the Accountability Board requesting greenhouse gas emissions disclosures. It passed. It actually passed. 55% of voters supported this proposal. And 55% is quite remarkable considering that 42% of Jack in the Box is held by institutional shareholders.
I think actually all of the emissions disclosure proposals are likely to pass this year going forward, if for no other reason than the SEC just passed final disclosure rules about emissions, which are going to be on filings anyway. So now all the passages that you see should not be counted as victories so much as an admission, if they aren't pulled down, an admission that they have to do it no matter what.
And at Deere, that we covered here in the Big Vote, there's not much to report. All directors received more than 90% support, which is in line with your recommendations, Matt. Both anti-woke shareholder proposals failed miserably, about 1% support, while a proposal requesting shareholder ratification of golden parachutes managed 38% support. But when adjusted for institutional ownership, this means that 56% of the vote supported this resolution at Deere.
That gap is actually meaningful, right? The fact that the passive owners are voting with management largely no matter what means that we're abdicating the desires of the majority of shareholders to a few passive owners.
Let's move over to the Big Vote. This week we are covering Analog Devices, Massachusetts' own Analog Devices. Their annual meeting is coming up next week, March 13th. I want to give a few takeaways before I hand it over to you, Matt. I know you have a lot to say. According to our performance measurements, this company is hitting 786 in earnings. Now remember that an average is around 500. 786, I'm not too sure I've ever seen a board bat so high in earnings. Yeah. On the other hand, for total shareholder return, they're hitting only 461. So there is some disconnect between what this company is actually achieving and how the stock market sees the company. I will also point out that there is an incredibly annoying board leadership boondoggle, I'm calling it, on this board. Okay. You have Vincent Roche, who is CEO and chair. He's been CEO since 2013. You do have a new lead director, Stephen Jennings, but you have the former lead director, James Champy, who's been on the board for over 20 years, 13 of which of those were he was lead director. He's still on the board. And you have founder, former CEO and chair, Ray Stata, who's been on the board since 1965. That is a lot of like former and current and maybe board leadership. It just seems unnecessary to me. And finally, I wanted to point out this one little. We've been focusing a lot on the skill sets of these companies, and this one I found to be really interesting, or maybe just peculiar. Only 3 of the board members, Matt, at Analog Devices have cybersecurity information systems expertise, which is quite low. All the other skills,
that's self-reported, right?
Self-reported, all the other skills, it's like 11 out of 12. But everyone's got the skills and everything, right? This one's quite low. One of those people is 81-year-old James Champy, former independent lead director, who was probably not going to stay on the board very long. But here's why I pointed this out: that The company made a point of the fact that in December 2023, the audit committee amended its charter to say that it is now taking over oversight of cybersecurity, the cybersecurity program.
That sounds good.
And the proxy statement made several references to how important this issue is to this company. However, none of the directors who have this skill set in cybersecurity are on the audit committee. So again, we're seeing it just these at company after company. We are seeing very strange disconnects between either which skills are even represented in the first place of these companies or what the people are doing with these skills. I'm going to scream about it every week because I think it's past time that boards catch up to these issues.
I mean, it's worth backing up with this company to know what they actually do, right? They basically build sensors and circuit boards. I mean, they're sort of the commodity inside where NVIDIA might be an AMD and Intel are building the chip, the power that powers the sort of, circuit board, the brain of the circuit board. Someone's got to do the boards. And they are what's interesting to me is how much they are the barrier between the physical world and the digital world. They are the sensors that take in all the information into that brain. as that brain is increasingly AI, those sensors are increasingly hackable or will likely be targets of hacks, right?
Absolutely.
So they're right to focus on cybersecurity, and we're right to ask the question, do they have that skill? But they're wrong with sort of like the early iterations of it, and the fact that, you mentioned the board leadership boondoggle. You were talking about people who have been there for 20 years handing leadership to each other. I mean, that's not a great series. But I'll say this, and I don't say this often. I actually don't have a problem with the construction of this board.
Okay.
In almost any way. What we're seeing as a progression here is this year there are 2 directors who are stepping down. They are actually not being replaced. They look like they added directors last year and they're taking them off
this year, but
right?
they did add 2 directors at the end of 2023.
Now, one of the directors that is stepping down had been there for 20 years,
right?
And they are replacing them with younger, newer directors. Now, this is one of the oldest influence-weighted boards in the entire semiconductor industry. The influence weight, and this is largely because of Champy and Stata, the influence weighted age, by that we mean we look at the influence each board member has, and if you multiply it by their age, you basically can see what's the decision-making age of the board.
Ooh, I like this.
Is 71 years old, where the average board age is 65. Meaning the decisions are being largely made by older, more influential, long-standing
Well, you're
directors.
mostly talking about founder Ray Stata, who's 89 years old.
Correct. Well, Champy's 81, so we're not,
Well, here's where I'm going to disagree with you, though. I think you're right that there is a natural board refreshment going on, and I think James Champy, I think he should be going this year, but maybe it'll be coming soon. If I were going to recommend anything to shareholders, it would be to vote against James Champy. But here's the problem I'm having is that the 2 directors they brought on in 2023, one is an economist, that's super director Peter Henry. He's also a director at Citigroup and Nike. This guy is a director,
he's a superstar.
But he's an economist. And the other guy is Stephen Jennings, who comes from Deloitte. I just, it doesn't add up to me. I don't get it.
No, but you think of actually who was there before, right? Actually, when you look at the skills of the actual board itself, they are almost equal weighted now. Engineers, which is what you want on a company like this, and consultants, lawyer, finance types.
They're good at steering a very heavy ship. I get that. Like they're good at keeping it afloat and keeping things going. From all the fundamentals I've seen and the share price I've seen, they would suggest that the company is doing quite well. Like that this board is well suited to keep that company going in the right direction. But what scares me, Matt, is what you talked about at the beginning, that you're talking about the bridge, the device that links all of our smart devices. And what scares me is that I'm hoping they're spending a lot on research and development, and I'm hoping that they're going to start to add some younger cybersecurity whippersnappers, because that is one thing that generally scares me, not only as a shareholder but just as a normal person.
So in the last few years, they've spent a decent amount on R&D, between 12 and 17% of revenue on R&D, which is a decent amount. That's something you might expect from an engineering firm. But the bigger issue is in the short term is a little bit different to me, because the cybersecurity issue I think you're dealing with over time, especially as those sensors become more and more instrumental to link AI to the outside world, right? As when Elon Musk is talking about a fleet of robots that are like living in all of our homes, the only way those robots touch and feel and understand is largely using devices analog devices that produce touch and feel and sound, and even future devices like smell and things like that into the AI brain that other people are developing. That said, this is a company, the biggest gap that I noticed actually in the skills and in the share price, this is a company that mince money. Their earnings they routinely are hitting 40%, operating margins. They have plenty of cash,
which reflects in the board performance, right? 786, the board's hitting in earnings.
Some super strong earnings. They actually pay really strong dividends as a dividend payer, which is very old school. It's not like dividends usually get superseded now by buybacks. They offer some buybacks with some dividends. But the stock has underperformed the S&P in almost every time period you can think of.
This is a narrative that we talk about over and over and over on our shows, which is that the market rewards crazy. They reward young founders who control 80% of the voting power and who say horrible things and do horrible things and grow at breakneck speeds. But they don't, unfortunately, support these companies that have been there doing it well forever. Like, these are great long-term investments, and yet the market tends to ignore them, unfortunately.
Analysts seem to think it's an overvalued stock, despite the fact that they rank 87th out of the U.S. large caps. Out of the 533 U.S. large cap companies, they rank 87th as a team for profitability generated. Mm-hmm. That to me suggests that they're actually doing a good job of what they should be doing, manufacturing solid products, selling them at a profit. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that the egghead analysts from Princeton are angry at the MIT engineers. There's always been a battle there.
But that's the gap. The gap here is actually the earnings TSR gap suggests that all the engineering skill and all the sort of guardrail-y, consulting, lawyerly, finance bro skill, what you're missing is sex appeal. This company has no sex appeal. It's great for a long-term investor who's looking for a company that is likely to throw off cash flow and build a solid product that will have continued use cases as we move into an AI future.
I guess the question is, does any company need sex appeal? You're saying it like it's a negative.
No, I'm saying like while Nvidia is busy, making a chip and trading at a 90x price to earnings,
and its CEO wears snazzy leather jackets,
and he wears leather jackets, they're selling a future that this company is not selling. This company's last earnings call, they talked about how they were really excited to work with Honeywell on helping them decrease the energy load of one of their plants. I mean, Matt, that's nothing sexy about that.
Matt, you're describing to me why Biden is losing in the polls to Trump. It is the exact same reason. America is addicted to crazy.
But there's a level of sex appeal that you can add, just adding marketing skills or sales skills to the board. And I'm not saying
are we already to your recommendations?
Level. We're getting there. Yeah. I'm not saying I can level, marketing skills like at Hologic last week, where you flip the entire board, do short-term marketing, make your stock bump, get out, and then basically
we don't need that here. No,
we don't need that here. What you need is a little bit of it. You need to start talking about what the narrative of this company is going into the future better than you currently are, because the risks still exist. You have a board that is likely positioned for risks, namely sensor failure. If a sensor fails and it's an autonomous vehicle, that results in death. You can't have that. You need this is a company that currently has no controversies according to MSCI research, that hasn't in the last 3 years. They don't have big issues, partially because the board is an excellent set of guardrails to these issues.
Yeah, except as these devices become a bigger part of our infrastructure, you're right to point out that this is an important thing, because this is going to become a more and more important topic as we go forward, right? Because we're only starting to see these smart devices get a grip on our population, but it's going to keep growing.
Yeah,
I don't know what I just said there, but I know what I'm thinking.
We do know that if analog devices represents the sort of gateway between the physical and the digital, that the failure of that gateway could have implications as we start to rely on AI, right?
Come on, let's get to your recommendations. Come on.
So look, here are my recommendations.
Yeah.
My recommendations on this board are pretty simple. The entire management team and I mean entire, with the exception of 3 people, are engineers.
Okay, so this is the opposite of Boeing.
The non-engineers are the chief counsel, who's a lawyer, obviously.
Sure, of course.
the CFO, who they just added, who
Okay.
background in econ and finance, and the head of HR, who has a master's degree in HR. Right?
And let me
Like
guess. Yeah, let me guess that two of those. I'm going to guess that the head of legal and the head of HR are women.
Yeah, that is correct.
Yes.
The chief customer officer is also a woman.
Mm-hmm.
But
course.
she's also an engineer. So,
okay.
even your salesperson is an engineer.
Yeah.
And as we said, the board skills suggest that this is a lot of engineering, a lot of academic backgrounds. These are very, very smart, accomplished people.
This is a company founded in Cambridge from an MIT grad, two MIT grads. Yeah, go ahead.
This year, my recommendation is you vote against no one.
Oh.
I actually think you vote for everybody on this board. I think Champy's going to age out next year. Next year, you vote against Champy.
You know my philosophy. I think every year you should focus on one director. Not even look. It doesn't even have to be someone who's underperforming or you hate shit, but just to target one person, just to make room for someone new, something new. Whether it's someone diverse, whether it's a different skill set, whatever it is.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I just think
and that would be Champy. That would
what
be
you want to do is engage with Analog Devices board this year and ask them what their plan is to replace Champy next year, who they're targeting, the kind of skills that they're looking for, and then Ed Frank the following year. Because what you need, I think, is some marketing strategy or design or sales. You need a little bit of that sex appeal. You need to start to move the needle on the way people perceive you, because if you're that gateway between the physical and the digital, that's a super important, super interesting thing you can be. You're the eyes of every drone. You're the eyes of autonomous vehicles. That's important and interesting, especially since they just signed a contract to work with BMW on Ethernet-enabled cars, which is a whole other thing where they are creating the centralized brain inside of cars with BMW. So this is real stuff.
And to your point on Ed Frank and why you don't need an Ed Frank is that you already have a Susie Wee. Both are IEEE fellows. You don't need two IEEE fellows.
You don't really need it.
Yeah.
And so my feeling this year is you voting against no one. This is an all-for vote on the board. And then with the goal of engaging for 2025 and 2026, Champy's got to age out. Stata's going to age out on his own. Like I don't know that you need to vote him out, but he doesn't need to be there either.
Yeah,
and
he'll
Ed
munger
Frank
his way out of the board. Yeah.
Ed Frank needs to be gone in 2026, and you need to instill some new blood around that marketing sales stuff and sort of future tech.
Okay, so shockingly, Matt is saying vote for everybody and don't care about your investment at Analog Devices.
I love this company, but I'm not going to lie. I did like
you're just a homer. You like New England companies.
I did days of research and I would buy the stock.
Moving on to SeonPay, where I know where this was a bit of a head scratcher for you, Matt. So here's the story on SeonPay at Analog Devices. In 2022, the company gave just an unusually massive golden hello equity package to Executive Vice President Gregory Bryant, valued at $24 million, which meant that year he made $10 million more than the CEO made. So shareholders, I think, were rightfully kind of pissed about that golden hello package. So they voted. So roughly 20-something% of them voted against SeonPay in 2022. And what happened, I think, was that they engaged with the board, and the board basically said, we don't care. We're not going to really change anything. We're not going we just don't. We're not really interested in your point of view. So I think what happened is that, again, in 2023, those same shareholders voted against SeonPay. So you saw that in 2023, 20% of shareholders voted against pay at Analog Devices, despite, Matt, all the positive things you're saying. And despite the fact that when we analyze their pay package, while yes, it is outrageous relative to the world, they have a 527 to 1 CEO pay ratio. It's horrible. But for its industry, for the S&P 500, for America, it's actually, the whole thing is relatively normal. So that's my takeaway from why there are still shareholders angry about pay at Analog Devices.
And there's some interesting ways to cut this pay package that I didn't know about until we talked about it in pre-production, which are, like if you're looking at how much cash basically Roche brought home, he brings home a lot of sort of immediate cash relative to his pay, or sort of unvested options that aren't linked to performance, right? And the proxy advisors don't like that. But when you look at Roche next to like Hock Tan at Broadcom, who got a stock option package worth $161 million last year, which is absurd. They like it because it's linked to stock in a different way.
Again, we don't have direct insight into this, but I still think that there's a lingering anger about the Golden Hello package in 2022. I think that's what this is about.
I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying that when I look at the data, it didn't strike me that the CEO was dramatically overpaid to
this is what's frustrating.
Vote against.
This is what's frustrating always about pay is that the ESG research field and ratings providers, they haven't figured out a way to articulate what any of this means, right? The investors themselves who vote on this, they don't articulate very well why they're voting yes here, no there. So the compensation discussion analysis sections are often 40 pages long, so it's difficult to understand the positives and the negatives. So again, you left with kind of a head scratcher. Like that, this is the problem with pay, executive pay in America is very much what you're saying, which is I don't get it, right?
That's right.
Although I will tell you what they do that all companies annoyingly do is that they secretly increase base salary and equity award grants every year. The CEO's base salary just magically went from $1.1 million to $1.2 million this year, and his equity grant magically went from $15 million to $20 million this year. But why? We never know why. They just get their increases. So anyway, Matt, what is your takeaway about pay? Would you vote yes or no on pay?
Look, I would vote yes for the time being.
You just like analog devices.
Well, if you're going to vote for all the members of the pay committee, then you should vote for the pay. I mean, I actually think to be consistent on the end, if I'm going to vote for the directors, I'm going to vote for the pay who are choosing it. So I'm fine with the pay this year.
So Matt, so far, saying nothing about analog devices. Let's wrap up on one shareholder proposal. That's from John Chevedden, asking for a simple majority vote. How about that one? Will you support that?
I mean, almost anything John Chevedden says, I'm going to vote for.
All right, good enough.
I think he's always right.
That's it. That's the Proxy Countdown for the week of March 4th, 2024. Join us next week when we jump back into the alternative democracy pool, forever on the lookout for shareholder sharks, floating band-aids, and wayward directors.